The story of history is not only about what has been discovered, but also about what remains hidden. We walk through the ruins of empires, gaze upon toppled statues and unearthed treasures buried for millennia. Yet some of the greatest figures ever to walk the earth have eluded our grasp in death. Their tombs, supposed final resting places, remain lost to us. And with them, perhaps, the truth of their lives, their mysteries, and their legacies. Imagine standing in the deserts of Mongolia, searching in vain for the grave of a conqueror whose empire spanned from the Pacific to Europe. Imagine combing the ruins of Alexandria, where legends whisper of a queen's tomb lost beneath sand and sea. Imagine the frustration of historians tracing the final march of Alexander the Great, only to find the trail goes cold somewhere between Babylon and Egypt. These absences are not just accidents of history, they are deliberate acts, accidents of fate, erasures of memory, and puzzles yet unsolved. Why, after centuries of searching, can we still not find the tombs of Alexander the Great, Cleopatra, Attila the Hun, and Genghis Khan? To begin with Alexander, whose death set in motion a mystery that has baffled scholars for over 2,000 years. He died in Babylon in 323 BCE, a young king at the height of his power, having conquered the known world. Legends say his body did not decay for days, a sign of divinity, a confirmation that he was more than mortal. His generals, loyal and yet already scheming, argued over what to do with his remains. One plan called for his body to be buried in Macedonia, among his ancestors. Another whispered of an oracle's prophecy that wherever Alexander was laid to rest would become the center of the world. The funeral cortege that carried his embalmed body was a wonder of the age, a golden carriage adorned with treasures rolling westward from Babylon. But here the record fractures. Somewhere along the way, Ptolemy, one of Alexander's most ambitious generals, intercepted the procession and carried his master's remains to Egypt. To Ptolemy, securing Alexander's body meant securing legitimacy. Whoever held the remains of the world's greatest conqueror could claim to inherit his glory. In Alexandria, a city Alexander himself had founded, his tomb became a place of pilgrimage. Roman emperors came to pay homage, Julius Caesar and Augustus among them, bending the knee before the embalmed king. For centuries, the body of Alexander was said to rest in Alexandria's Soma mausoleum, drawing crowds and inspiring awe. But then, silence. Earthquakes, invasions, floods, and centuries of urban growth transformed the city. The tomb was swallowed, forgotten, erased. Today, archaeologists dig beneath the streets of modern Alexandria, searching for some clue, some fragment of stone that might point to the lost resting place of the man who sought to be a god. But the city is stubborn. Layers of history, modern construction, and the sea itself guard its secrets. Was Alexander's body destroyed in some cataclysm? Was it stolen, hidden away, or desecrated? We do not know. What we do know is that for 2 millennia, the world has searched for him in vain. And in that absence, Alexander remains eternal, a ghost haunting the city he built. If Alexander's mystery is tied to ambition and legend, Cleopatra's is bound to love, politics, and the fall of an empire. The last queen of Egypt, Cleopatra VII, was not merely a ruler but a strategist, a seductress, and a woman who wielded power in a man's world with unmatched brilliance. Her story, entwined with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, has been immortalized in plays and poetry, but her end is perhaps more dramatic than any fiction. After Antony's defeat at Actium and the Roman invasion of Egypt, Cleopatra found herself cornered in Alexandria, her power crumbling, her dynasty finished. Faced with humiliation at the hands of Octavian, the future Augustus, she chose death. Ancient sources tell of the asp, the poisonous snake that bit her and brought her life to a sudden end. Whether true or apocryphal, what matters is the image. Cleopatra, regal even in death, taking fate into her own hands. Her final wish, according to the Romans, was to be buried beside Antony, united in death as they had been in life. Octavian, now master of the Mediterranean, allowed it. The tomb of Antony and Cleopatra was said to have been built near Alexandria, a grand monument to a doomed romance. But like Alexander's, it vanished. Perhaps it lies beneath the shifting sands. Perhaps the waters of the Mediterranean claimed it. In recent decades, archaeologists have scoured the ruins of Taposiris Magna, a temple west of Alexandria, where coins and inscriptions linked to Cleopatra have been found. Some believe her tomb may lie there, hidden in chambers deep underground. Others argue the search is futile, that earthquakes and the encroaching sea have erased all trace of her. Yet the legend endures. To find Cleopatra's tomb would not just be to find a queen. It would mean touching the last breath of pharaonic Egypt, the end of a dynasty stretching back 3,000 years, and the final defiance of a woman who chose love and death over surrender. From the warm sands of Egypt, the narrative shifts to the vast, windswept steppes of Central Asia, where another tomb remains hidden, this time by design. Attila the Hun, scourge of God, terror of Rome, the man who brought empires to their knees, died suddenly in 453 CE. Accounts differ on the cause. Some say it was a nosebleed on his wedding night, others claim poisoning, still others whisper of assassination. Whatever the truth, his death threw his empire into chaos. But his burial was no less extraordinary than his life. The Huns, fearful that their leader's resting place might be desecrated, took elaborate measures to ensure it would never be found. According to legend, his body was laid within 3 coffins, one of gold, one of silver, one of iron. After the burial, a river was diverted to cover the tomb, and the slaves who performed the work were slaughtered to keep the secret. The Huns vanished from history not long after, but Attila's tomb, somewhere along the Danube, has remained hidden for over 1,500 years. The search for Attila's grave has become almost mythical. Archaeologists, treasure hunters, and even local farmers have speculated about its location, but the Danube is a shifting force, its waters changing course over centuries, erasing landscapes and remaking them anew. To this day, no trace of the golden burial has been uncovered. Perhaps it lies beneath layers of silt, or perhaps it was looted in some forgotten age. But the story persists. The belief that somewhere beneath the earth or water lies the body of the man who humbled Rome. Unlike Alexander and Cleopatra, whose tombs were lost to time and chance, Attila's was hidden by intention, a burial meant to ensure mystery. And in that, the Huns succeeded. If Attila's tomb was hidden by fear of desecration, Genghis Khan's was hidden by reverence, tradition, and secrecy. The founder of the largest contiguous empire in history, Genghis Khan's death in 1227 was shrouded in as much mystery as his birth. Some say he fell in battle against the Western Shia. Others claim he died from a fall off his horse. Still others whisper darker tales of assassination, of curses, of divine punishment. Whatever the truth, the Mongols believed that his final resting place must remain untouched, a sacred secret. His body was carried back toward his homeland, escorted by loyal warriors. Along the way, anyone who witnessed the procession was killed to maintain secrecy. Once the burial was complete, legend says a forest was planted over the site, and rivers diverted to conceal it. Thousands of horses may have trampled the earth flat to erase any trace. And, like Attila's slaves, those who buried him may have been executed to ensure silence. For centuries, Mongols themselves avoided searching for the tomb. To disturb it was to disturb their ancestor, a violation of sacred tradition. Even today, the region believed to hold his remains, the Ich-Korig, or Great Taboo, in the Khenti Mountains of Mongolia, remains largely unexplored, protected by reverence and law. Modern technology, satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar has been applied, yet no discovery has been made. Some believe Genghis Khan was buried with unimaginable treasures, the wealth of conquered nations. Others think his tomb was deliberately austere, in keeping with Mongol traditions. What is certain is that his grave remains undiscovered, a ghostly absence in the landscape of history. Together, these four mysteries, Alexander, Cleopatra, Attila, and Genghis, speak to something deeper than the loss of stone and bone. They remind us of the fragility of memory, the power of myth, and the limits of human knowledge. Their missing tombs have turned them into legends, figures who belong not just to history, but to imagination. We can picture Alexander's golden carriage rolling through the desert, Cleopatra's final moment with the asp, Attila's river-shrouded grave, Genghis Khan's hidden mountain resting place. And in not finding them, we keep their stories alive. Perhaps if we ever did uncover these tombs, the myth would end. Perhaps what makes them eternal is precisely that they remain hidden, elusive, untouchable. The enigma of Alexander's missing tomb has inspired not just scholars, but emperors, dreamers, and conquerors across centuries. When Augustus came to Alexandria after his victory over Antony and Cleopatra, he visited the Soma mausoleum and reportedly placed a golden crown upon Alexander's embalmed head. Yet even then, the body was said to be damaged by time, perhaps crumbling, perhaps diminished, as if the physical shell of a god-king could not long survive the eyes of mortals. Later Roman emperors repeated the ritual, bowing before Alexander in a display of reverence that bordered on obsession. But in late antiquity, the trail fades. Some say the tomb was desecrated when Christianity rose to dominance and pagan shrines were destroyed. Others claim earthquakes toppled the structure, burying it beneath rubble that has long since blended into the city. For centuries, explorers claim to have stumbled upon the grave, each time raising hopes, each time proving false. Napoleon, when he invaded Egypt in the late 18th century, is rumored to have sought Alexander's resting place, driven by the romantic idea that one emperor might commune with another across the gulf of time. He did not find it, though he did carry away countless other relics of Egypt's past. Today, archaeologists still scour the streets, particularly in the district called Kom el-Dika, where some believe the tomb may lie entombed beneath layers of Alexandrian soil. Every new excavation sparks whispers. Could this be the place? Could Alexander, who wished to be remembered as a god, finally emerge from the shadows of history? While Alexander's mystery lies in the grandeur of conquest and empire, Cleopatra's resonates with intimacy and tragedy. The image of her death has haunted imaginations for centuries, a queen draped in royal robes, reclining upon a golden couch, choosing death on her own terms. Octavian paraded her children in Rome, but kept her memory under careful control, erasing her from monuments, suppressing her image, ensuring that her story was told not by Egyptians, but by their conquerors. And yet the fascination endured. Shakespeare made her immortal, artists painted her demise, and archaeologists still pursue her shadow in the ruins west of Alexandria. The search for her tomb has become one of archaeology's most tantalizing quests. At Taposiris Magna, the temple dedicated to Osiris, tunnels and chambers have been unearthed where inscriptions mention Cleopatra. Some believe this was her chosen burial site, perhaps a symbolic gesture linking herself to the goddess of resurrection and to Isis, with whom she was closely associated. To uncover her tomb would be to restore her voice, to reclaim Egypt's last pharaoh from the propaganda of her enemies. Yet, as with Alexander, the earth resists. Floods, earthquakes, and time conspire against discovery. Some scholars argue that Cleopatra's tomb may lie beneath the modern city of Alexandria, lost forever beneath streets and apartments. Others suspect the Mediterranean has claimed it entirely, Still, the search continues, each coin, each inscription, each wall fragment fanning the flames of hope. To find Cleopatra would be to pierce through layers of myth and legend and stand face to face with a woman who shaped the destiny of empires. In contrast to the splendor of Egyptian tombs, the mystery of Attila's grave is bound to fear, secrecy, and destruction. To the Romans, Attila was a nightmare made flesh, the scourge of God who burned cities, plundered provinces, and threatened the very heart of the empire. Yet his own people revered him as the unifier of the Huns, a figure of destiny. His burial, if the legends are true, was meant not as a display of wealth, but as a fortress of silence. The story of the river diverted to cover his tomb echoes ancient traditions of secrecy, like those of the Scythians and other nomadic peoples who feared desecration by enemies. The three coffins, iron for strength, silver for victory, gold for wealth, symbolize a man who embodied all three. But the lengths taken to conceal his body ensured that his grave became not a shrine, but a mystery. For centuries, treasure hunters have dreamed of unearthing it, convinced that unimaginable riches lie beneath the Danube's shifting waters. Historians, however, suggest a different view. The Huns, unlike the Egyptians, were not prone to elaborate tombs filled with treasure. Perhaps the legend of gold and silver coffins is Roman invention, a projection of their own expectations onto a nomadic culture. Perhaps Attila was buried with little more than his weapons and horse, in keeping with his people's traditions. If so, the great secret may not be the presence of treasure, but the absence of it. The true wealth lies in the story itself, the belief that a king so feared could only be hidden from the eyes of men. His missing grave stands as a metaphor. The terror of Attila did not leave a monument. It vanished like smoke across the steppes, leaving only fear and memory. The story of Genghis Khan carries echoes of Attila but magnified on a far greater scale. His empire was vast beyond imagination, stretching from the shores of China to the gates of Europe. His death in 1227 marked not only the passing of a conqueror, but the beginning of a legend carefully shrouded in secrecy. The Mongols had no tradition of monumental tombs. Their spirituality was tied to the land, the sky, and the eternal steppe. To bury their great Khan in a hidden place, to erase all traces of his body, was an act of reverence. The Ich Korig, the great taboo, remains a forbidden zone, watched over for centuries by guardians who ensured that no outsider would disturb its sanctity. Stories tell of entire forests planted over his grave, rivers diverted, the ground flattened by horses, an entire landscape reshaped to conceal him. To this day, the Khenti Mountains remain largely untouched, a place where satellite surveys and modern archaeology have been constrained by both tradition and politics. In recent decades, attempts to search the area have sparked controversy in Mongolia, where many believe that disturbing Genghis Khan's tomb would bring misfortune. To Mongols, his resting place is not a prize for foreigners to plunder, but a sacred secret. And yet, the curiosity persists. What lies within? Some imagine vast treasures, the plunder of cities from Baghdad to Beijing. Others believe his grave is austere, a simple burial beneath the earth. Perhaps the greatest treasure of all is not material but symbolic, the confirmation of where the man who reshaped the world finally lay down to rest. What links these four mysteries together is not only their elusiveness, but the way they reflect the cultures that produced them. Alexander's tomb was a monument to conquest and divine ambition, swallowed by the city that bore his name. Cleopatra's was the last breath of a dynasty, drowned in tragedy and romance, claimed by sea and sand. Attila's was erased deliberately, a burial designed to terrify and conceal, leaving no trace for enemies to find. Genghis Khan's was hidden out of reverence, a sacred silence maintained for centuries. Each lost tomb tells us not only about the individual, but about how societies remember, or choose not to remember, their dead. And in the act of searching, we reveal as much about ourselves as we do about them. We are drawn to these absences because they symbolize the limits of knowledge, the mysteries that history refuses to yield. Yet the quest continues. In Alexandria, archaeologists still dig, chasing fragments of Alexander's golden age and Cleopatra's final stand. Along the Danube, the legend of Attila's river-buried tomb fuels speculation among historians and adventurers alike. In Mongolia, satellites peer down upon forbidden valleys, their lenses straining to pierce the veil of the great taboo. Each search is more than an excavation. It is a dialogue with the past, a negotiation between myth and evidence, between the hunger for answers and the acceptance of mystery. Perhaps we will never find these tombs. Perhaps they will remain hidden forever, their secrets guarded by earth, water, and time. But perhaps that is their power. In their absence, they loom larger than any monument. They remind us that history is not only about what we can see, touch, and measure, but also about what lies just beyond our reach. And so we are left with a question. Is it better to find these tombs, to drag them into the light, or to leave them as they are? Mysteries that inspire imagination, legends that resist the passage of time. For Alexander, Cleopatra, Attila, and Genghis, their missing graves have become part of their immortality. To find them might close the story, but to keep searching ensures it is never truly over.